Hey everyone, and welcome to What Did I Miss?, where today I'll be breaking down the third episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds and looking for all the Easter eggs and other references that you may have missed. I was very happy with the first two episodes of this series, but was kind of blown away by this one, as I believe that it contained all the best parts of a Star Trek episode into one, and once again, gave us a bunch of reasons to care about these characters and crew. Leading up to this series, I was a little worried that Captain Pike would be the focal point, similar to how Michael Burnham and Jean-Luc Picard are in their respective series. But so far, the thing I like most about Star Trek Strange New Worlds is how deep and nuanced the new and returning characters are. A perfect example of this is what happens at the end of this episode with Dr. Mbenga and the B plot, and I will go into that and more here. But first, I want to thank you for clicking on this video, and ask that if you do enjoy it, to please not to forget to hit that like button. Also, if you have not yet, please hit that subscribe button as well, as it really does help out a small channel like mine. This episode, which is titled Ghosts of Illyria, seems to use a familiar jumping off point with its storyline, with the crew being infected by an unseen alien virus which causes them to behave irrationally. This format has been used many times, but I believe the first was on the original series in the episode The Naked Time. In that early entry to the franchise, the crew of the Enterprise is infected with a disease after observing a destroyed planet that causes them to act like 15-year-olds. The virus from this episode showed up again on the Enterprise D in the Next Generation episode The Naked Now, and I'm pretty sure that at least Data was happy that it did. Also, this is the third episode of this season, and The Naked Time was technically the third episode that aired of the original series, and The Naked Now is the third episode of the Next Generation's first season if you consider the two-part pilot Encounter at Farpoint 2 episodes. This episode of Strange New Worlds begins with the Enterprise arriving at a planet that contains a destroyed Illyrian colony. The Illyrians have actually been on Star Trek before, but did not look like the one that we see in this episode. An Illyrian freighter and its crew appeared on the Star Trek Enterprise episode Damage, but their genetic modifications were not mentioned. It is kind of odd that the writers chose to use this species in this episode, since besides sharing a name, there seem to be no other connections with the Illyrians shown on the Enterprise episode to the ones discussed in this episode of Strange New Worlds. Perhaps in future episodes, we will learn that Una also changed her appearance to that of a human so that she did not raise suspicion. The planet is in the path of an ion storm, which almost prevents them from using the transporters until Hemmer is able to boost the power. Ion storms are another frequent plot device used on Star Trek, and they are also known to do some crazy things to transporter signals, as in the original series episode Mirror Mirror, Captain Kirk, Dr. McCoy, Commander Scott, and Lieutenant Uhura were sent to the Mirror Universe after an ion storm boosted the power of the transporter. When Hemmer was able to boost the power in this episode, I half expected the away team to land in the Mirror Universe. The Transporter Chief Kyle may be the same Transporter Chief Kyle character that was seen on the original series as well as the movie The Wrath of Khan. Before they try and beam off the planet, Captain Pike offers to round up the away team and put himself in danger so the others can make it to safety. I wouldn't be surprised if Captain Pike continues to put himself in dangerous situations, because he already knows his future and that he will be in an accident in 10 years, but also that he will be alive then. So if this is true, then really there is no way that he can die before he has his accident, which makes him kind of invincible now. And hey, am I the only one that thought that Timothée Chalamet from Dune joined the cast when this guy showed up? When Transporter Chief Kyle is unable to beam up the away team, he asks for help from Hemmer in engineering. In case you have not been watching my videos this season, you may not know that Hemmer is an Anar, which is a subspecies of Andorian. Anar have pale skin compared to the blue skin of Andorians, and those that are blind can see the future and communicate telepathically with others. The actor who plays Hemmer is named Bruce Horak, and he is a blind person, having been blind since childhood. Most of the away team is able to beam off the planet, but Captain Pike and Spock are left behind due to the approaching storm. A two-member away team being stranded together is also a very common Star Trek trope that has been used I think on each series, but my personal favorite is the Deep Space Nine episode titled The Ascent, which saw the odd couple of Quark and Odo stranded on a mountain and needing to climb to the top of it in order to be rescued. After the crew returns to the ship, members of the away team start to exhibit bizarre behavior. Ensign Chalamet is the first to succumb as he starts to take off his clothes and stare into a wall panel. I kind of think that the fact that he did take off his uniform is a reference to the episodes The Naked Time and The Naked Now, as both episodes also had a lot of that. Number 1 starts to feel some of the effects of the infection, but then they seem to subside. She contacts Dr. Mbenga, who states that the other members of the away team are also having medical emergencies. We learn later that this is because Number 1, or Una, is a product of genetic engineering, and that her own immune system was able to basically burn out the infection from her system. I have to admit, this series subverted my expectation with this storyline. because I thought that we were going to find out that La'an was genetically engineered due to her lineage, which had not been mentioned before this episode. But changing it to Una, the person that saved La'an and was her inspiration to join Starfleet, is a really smart way to handle it, and I was once again pleasantly surprised. Una is not the first prominent officer to hide their own genetic modifications, as on Deep Space Nine, Dr. Bashir was forced to hide the genetic modifications that his parents had forced on him as a child until his secret was outed in the episode Dr. Bashir, I Presume. Assuming command of the ship and the mission, Una works with Hemmer and then the computer to find a cure or reason for the spreading infection. She asks the computer for information on the original Illyrian colony in the Valterra Nebula. The nebula was directly referenced once before on the Star Trek Next Generation episode titled The Chase in a throwaway line, but this may be referencing the original appearance of the Illyrians on the aforementioned Enterprise episode, who were trying to get back to said colony from the Delphic Expanse. La'an arrives and notices that Una is researching the Illyrians, which brings up a debate about genetic engineering between the two. La'an reveals that she is indeed aware that she is the descendant of Khan Noonien Singh, who was the leader of a group of genetically altered humans that began a eugenics war. I'm going to assume that you know who Khan is and are aware of the eugenics wars, but in case you are not, you can watch pretty much any of my videos from the past 2 months to learn more, as both Strange New Worlds and Picard have referenced them quite a bit. It is still a bit odd that when Khan is thought out during the original series episode Space Seed, that barely anyone on the ship is aware of who he is, if his descendant served on the same ship 5 years prior to that. So I wonder how the writers on this show are going to tie La'an into the forthcoming storyline with her ancestor and the next captain of the Enterprise. After La'an starts to exhibit symptoms of the infection, the ship issues a COVID lockdown. On the planet, the storm begins to worsen as Captain Pike and Spock see what literally look like ghosts on Illyria.
Dude, that's a wicked awesome band name.
Una learns that the contagion on the ship travels by light. Eventually, the rest of the crew start to exhibit symptoms, including Hemmer, who states that he can feel the light on his skin. Una then turns into a superhero and picks Hemmer up and carries him over her shoulder to sickbay. This wouldn't be the first time that actress Rebecca Romijn played a superpowered individual, as she also played the mutant Mystique in the X-Men franchise for many years. She admits to Nurse Chapel and Dr. Mbenga that she is in fact an Illyrian and has hidden her heritage and abilities from Starfleet. She is forced to stop La'an from creating a warp core breach, who overheard Una's confession and now feels betrayed by her mentor. It is revealed in the first episode that Una found La'an in space after she was released from a harsh colony created by a species known as the Gorn. On the planet, Captain Pike and Spock survived the ion storm thanks to the energy beings, who may in fact be versions of the missing colonists. Spock also learns that it was the Illyrians' wish to join the Federation that led to their eventual demise. The Federation and its values have not always been as pristine as the organization would like, and this is not the first time that their own prejudice has created a moral dilemma. Just recently on the series Picard, it was revealed that the character Seven, who of course is a former Borg drone that was rescued by the captain and crew of the Voyager, was not allowed to join Starfleet upon her return because of her past as a Borg. In the end though, the franchise seems to try to correct these errors, as later on in the series, Seven is given a field commission of captain by Admiral Picard. Similarly, Dr. Bashir is allowed to continue as a Starfleet officer after his past is revealed on Deep Space Nine, much the same that Una is allowed to continue on the Enterprise as well. Una then tries to reconcile with La'an as they share a bowl of strawberries. Their choice of fruit is probably not a coincidence, as just last year while this episode is being filmed, the first genetically modified strawberries were being released to the public by a company in Idaho. After meeting with Captain Pike, who orders Una to fix a transporter issue that caused the outbreak, she finds that Dr. Mbenga is holding a transporter signal in the buffer. He regrettably reveals that what he is keeping in the transporter buffer is his daughter, who is sick, in the hopes that he will be able to find a cure for her. In the Next Generation episode Relics, which saw the return of Commander Montgomery Scott, who had stored himself and another crewman in a transporter buffer for over 100 years, it was revealed that a transporter signal, if cycled correctly over time, would be able to keep a transporter pattern indefinitely. But this situation also reminded me of the Enterprise episode Daedalus, in which the inventor of the transporter on Earth loses his child in a transporter accident and tries desperately to bring him back using the technology. Although this episode mainly follows Una and her reveal, the writers are still able to throw a very meaningful storyline about Dr. Mbenga in that now makes the audience feel like we know him and care about him more. It is very rare to use a B-plot this effectively, and honestly makes this episode possibly one of the best in all of Star Trek for me. The episode ends with Una reciting a log to the computer about what has occurred and her own misgivings about her situation before she tells the computer to delete the log. This really reminded me of the ending of the Deep Space Nine episode In the Pale Moonlight, in which Captain Sisko also records a log about the events that occur in that episode, and then emphatically deletes the log and decides to live with the moral consequences instead. Well, that was everything I saw, but let me know in the comments if I missed anything. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please hit that like button if you have enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time on What Did I Miss?